Ancient, ageless, and unstoppable, all know to fear the unrelenting devastation that is the Tarrasque, a creature of legend associated with the greatest of heroes and the darkest of times. Little is known of the beast widely held as the greatest of monsters. The legendary Tarrasque is possibly the most dreaded monster of all, for when it is active, it ravishes the countryside for miles. All vegetation and animal life is devoured or driven away. The land through which the monster passes becomes a barren waste which requires years to recover. The Tarrasque eats voraciously and continually, and all living things are food to it. A terrifying embodiment of wanton destruction, the Tarrasque attacks without motivation or purpose, unless the purpose is to obliterate all life. Let's talk about the strongest monster in the Monster Manual. Everyone knows the Tarrasque. It almost seems silly for me to describe it. A scaly biped 70 feet long and 50 feet tall with two horns on its head, a lashing tail, and a reflective carapace. The creature weighs about 130 tons. Now before we go and break down the creature, let's see what the Monster Manual tells us first. We're told that it is the most dreaded monster in the material plane and that there is only one in existence, at least as far as we know. We're told that it carries itself like a bird of prey, leaning forward and using its tail for balance. It can swallow all but the largest of creatures whole using its cavernous maw, and its hunger is so great that it can devour the populations of entire towns. We're told that the potential for destruction of the Tarrasque is so vast that many civilizations have adopted it in their religious doctrines, portending his appearance as the end of the world. We're told that legends tell of how the Tarrasque slumbers in its secret lair beneath the earth, remaining in a dormant state for decades or centuries, and when it awakes, it obliterates everything in its path. The creature is immune to fire, does not need eyes to see you, and it's very resistant to magic. Lastly, and most importantly, its carapace reflects magic. Any form of spell cast against a creature that is a line spell like a lightning bolt, a ranged spell attack like any form of scorching ray, firebolt, or ray of frost, or even a magic missile will all be deflected away by its shiny carapace. On top of that, there is a high chance that the spell will be deflected directly back to the caster. There we go. A big stat sheet, but only 2 paragraphs for the strongest creature on the Monster Manual, though to be fair, the beast is incredibly enigmatic. I mean, we don't even know who actually created it. It's never been written. There is so much about the creature that is hidden in tales and stories, but today we're going to shine the limelight on this monster. Let's talk about what the Monster Manual does not tell you about the Tarrasque. First, I want to start with the singular most important thing about this creature, really just a defining feature of the Tarrasque that literally makes it what it is, that for some reason is not even mentioned in the Monster Manual. I mean, this is so huge. The Tarrasque is not even a Tarrasque without this. The creature is immortal. I mean, don't you wonder if there's only one Tarrasque, then how come the creature is still alive? I mean, what, has nobody killed it? Nobody has ever defeated the Tarrasque? I mean, yeah, people have in the past, and there are lore stories about those battles. The thing about the monster, though, it actually regenerates like a troll, but much better than a troll. See, a troll will literally not die for as long as it is regenerating. You can chop off his head, you can destroy its body, you can take the heart out of the body, it doesn't matter. It'll keep regenerating and it'll keep on fighting unless you use fire or acid to disrupt the healing process. The Tarrasque possesses a very similar healing ability, except that it doesn't have a fire or acid weakness. Its healing ability cannot be stopped. And I mean, it literally cannot be stopped. You chop off an arm, it'll come back. You scoop out an eye, it'll grow back. You disintegrate the Tarrasque into dust, and from the ashes, the creature will be born anew. The thing about its regeneration is that it is very slow. See, a troll will grow back its arm by the time you finish your drink. The vampire will regenerate its lost arm by the time you finish your sentence. The Tarrasque might take about an hour to regrow a lost limb. It'll do it, but longer than your typically regenerating monster. Its power is that it has no weakness, and no force in the world can stop it. Except for one. The only way to fully kill a Tarrasque and stop it from regenerating is by using a wish spell to counteract the healing process. You must first defeat the creature, not just by dealing lethal damage, but by really destroying the body, and then once the regeneration starts kicking in, you can use your wish spell to keep it dead. Whether this is actually a fully permanent solution is not really known, considering that all it would take would be an evil wizard obtaining the dusty remains of the Tarrasque and using its own wish spell to restart the healing process for the monster to be born anew. You live by the wish, you die by the wish. This is the only way to kill a Tarrasque that we have been given, but its efficacy is not really well known. Now, it is bizarre to me that this wasn't added to the 5th edition version of the Tarrasque, considering that it has been the biggest ability of the creature since it was created in the 1st edition. I mean, it is even in the lore. Even in Dota, the whole point of the Heart of the Tarrasque is that it gives you incredible regeneration. I mean, remember, there is only one Tarrasque on the planet, and that guy is still alive. And it is not because he hides all the time, he's always coming up to the surface to feed, which brings me to my second point. The monster manual mentions that the monster remains in a dormant state for decades or centuries, but in reality, he comes out way more often than that. I would imagine that people probably have this idea that when the monster shows up, it is this cataclysmic event that heralds the doom of the continent or of the world, and that unless it is stopped, everything will cease to be. The reality is that the Tarrasque actually comes out of hibernation and arrives to the surface to feed sometimes multiple times a year. See, the golden ratio to figure out for how long the monster will hibernate for is entirely dependent on how long it stays active, and the ratio is 1 to 30. For every day that the creature stays active, it'll spend 30 sleeping. Now, the average time frame for the Tarrasque to be active is about a week, since that's about the time he generally spends feeding before he goes back down to slumber. For that amount of time, he would be hibernating for about 7.5 months. Now, every once in a while, he will develop an extraordinaire appetite, which will keep him on the surface for months, and when this happens, you might see him slumber for 4 to 16 years. The highest ever recorded as far as the information that we have is 50 years tops that he has spent hibernating, but never anything higher than that. Now, don't get me wrong, the creature is literally unstoppable. If it comes out in your kingdom will probably not be a kingdom by the end of the week. It will devour everything in its path and will not leave anything in its wake. But by the end of the week or two, it will disappear and you probably will never see it again. See, the Tarrasque can appear anywhere on the planet. It might appear 1 month on the Sword Coast and the next in the Asian continent. Maybe it'll feed underwater next month. I mean, the planet is so big and the Tarrasque is always hunting in different places that the chances of the creature appearing on the same area twice within the span of 1,000 years is probably really, really rare. If the creature comes out and destroys your kingdom and then leaves, chances are the monster will not appear again to bother you ever. Now, this conveniently brings me to the third thing about the Tarrasque that the monster manual does not mention, and that is its special power to move through the earth. The Tarrasque has what we call Earth Glide, an ability that you might have seen in other monsters like the Earth Elemental. It is essentially the ability to move through the earth without disturbing the earth, sort of like the fantasy ability to go through walls, in the same way that some superheroes do or how ghosts do. In this way, the Tarrasque does not break things as he goes through the ground, and most importantly, does not leave a trail that can be followed. The monster does not leave a big gaping hole when it leaves underground in order to rest. This is why nobody knows where the creature lairs, since it is literally impossible to follow. Now, this ability only works on stone, dirt, or any form of earth except refined metal or continuous veins of pure metal. If the Tarrasque were to encounter a vein of gold on its way down underground, it would dislodge it and break the veins of gold. The Tarrasque uses this ability to find a suitable lair to hibernate once it has been satiated, but the lair it finds is not an open cavern or some hidden glade. It is certainly not the core of the planet, as some human sages would have you believe. No, instead, it becomes one with the earth. See, the earth gliding that the Tarrasque does is not just for movement, but for resting as well. The monster will pick a nice, enormous ball of rock underground, earth glide to the center of it, and sleep on it. Or in it? Or around it? It's complicated. The way it is described is that the creature is taking the exact same space as the rock, but the rock is not being dislodged or moved away. Both are on the same space. Now, this is the biggest reason why the Tarrasque is impossible to track. It exists within the earth, but also doesn't. It'll share the space with the stone around it to, in quotes, be at one with the stone, end quote. It's interesting because Dwarven sages actually have a name for this. They call this condition Arnstone. While in Arnstone, the Tarrasque does not suffocate, but sinks rapidly into a torpor in which its bodily processes slows, and it hibernates until the need for new nourishment awakens it. In fact, the reason there is variance in the time it takes for the Tarrasque to awaken is because the coziness of the rock actually does matter to the monster. If the rock it chose to lair in is damp, with lots of mineral waters cruising around it, then the beast will sleep for longer, and of course if it fed a lot. But if the rock is dry and with a lot of tremors, if, creatures pass by it a lot, if there are shifts in temperature, or if a dwarf or another creature accidentally wounds it with a pickaxe without realizing, then the creature will wake up sooner, and then it would be time to feed again. Now let's talk about the actual feeding behaviors. See, the Tarrasque is really just an enormous animal. Its intelligence is really low, and everything that it does is for the purposes of feeding. It destroys things because it eats things. It destroys everything because it eats anything. Technically speaking, the Tarrasque prefers living creatures to eat, and it prefers warm-blooded animals to cold-blooded, but in practicality, this doesn't actually matter. The creature can and will eat literally anything. It considers people food, animals food, plants and trees food, towns and cities food. The Tarrasque will eat rock and dirt, as it also considers it food. It literally doesn't matter what it is, the Tarrasque will eat it, and it will nourish him. For the entirety of its rampage, the Tarrasque will be eating without sleeping and without stopping until it is satisfied and leaves to hibernate. The creature has an expanding gullet that holds creatures and objects swallowed by it, who tumble around in this continuous spiral, working them down into a succession of 3 stomachs. Nothing, I repeat, nothing can survive the 3 stomachs. In fact, according to Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms, the stomach of the Tarrasque is known to be one of the most powerful destructive forces in the multiverse, able to destroy not just any object, but actually eliminate the magic of any object. In fact, it is one of the only known ways to actually destroy an artifact. An artifact is a magical item of legendary properties, something that transcends magic itself. The Staff of Orcas, the Hand and Eye of Vecna, the Sword of Kaz. These are items that are more than their physical self. The Necronomicon, for example, would be an artifact. These objects cannot be destroyed by normal means or even special means most of the time. They are eternal factors in the multiverse. The stomach of a Tarrasque has the ability to destroy most artifacts, but it doesn't end there. It is also one of the few ways one can fully and permanently destroy a god. See, many gods are manifestations of power, of virtues and ideals, and from the ashes of a dead god, a new god typically arises. You probably hear this story quite a bit, for example, when we talked about dragon gods on our previous series on dragons. A lot of myths that related to how Bahamut and Tiamat came to be revolved around the idea that they were born out of the corpse of a previous grand dragon god. You might recognize Tymora, for example, the goddess of luck. Tymora actually came from the previous goddess of luck who was killed, basically born from the ashes of that previous god. A god that would find themselves on the stomach of the Tarrasque, well, wouldn't make it back. In fact, that might actually end up being the only true way of ever killing a Tarrasque. If you had another, you could have a Tarrasque eat the other and actually kill it, but alas, there is only one. Hey, maybe that's why there's only one, huh? Now let's explore the three stomachs a bit though. Quote, "The uppermost stomach is a hot, wet place of tumbling stones and internal spines. The stomach wall seems lined with thousands of bony knife blades that break down large objects. Its walls are durable and very strong, with moving knots of muscle that can literally punch, squeeze, and claw at swallowed objects. This stomach can shatter large rocks down into smaller stones, break clods of earth into scattered motes, crack bark and bones, dismember bodies, and puncture containers so as to spill out and separate the contents. Belts and ropes are typically sawn into shorter lengths in this stomach, and glass is shattered. Metal items and glass shards are typically moved on swiftly to the deeper stomachs. The middle stomach of a Tarrasque is a churning, energetically pulsing, fleshy cauldron of corrosive acid. Unique in all the planes, this fluid possesses a disjunctive property, capable of stripping the magical powers from consumed magics. Here, everything breaks down. The last stomach of a Tarrasque is a long, winding, rhythmically thrumming tube of great heat, where anything that survives the previous stomachs, typically only the strongest and rarest of metals, meets its end. The acidic slurry boils off and is absorbed by the creature." End quote. It is said that it only takes mere moments to force what the Tarrasque consumes through its devastating digestive process. I think by now you realize just how incredible this creature is. It's nearly invincible, it's actually rather literally immortal, with powers that not just rivals but surpasses most demigods. We are on page 5 of this script and we're still going. Nobody knows who created it. The best guess we got is that it probably came as a creation of the primordials, a monstrous beast meant to destroy the creation of the gods without end. Possibly Tarrasque, the leader of the elemental evil, but who knows. The creature is immune to psionics, and it always has been from the beginning. Its mouth functions as a sword of sharpness, essentially making it so that it always does max damage to objects, and having the ability to perforate and cut through limbs with perfect precision and speed. The reflective carapace of the Tarrasque is not just immune to line, ray, bolts, and missile spell attacks, but it also reflects cone spells, and it always has. This part was neglected in the 5th edition Monster Manual entry, but the Tarrasque has always been able to deflect cone spells. I bring this up because Cone of Cold is a staple in any wizard's arsenal, and the Tarrasque has always been immune to it throughout the editions. Not just that, but the spell even gets brought up verbatim. Cone of Cold does not work on the Tarrasque. An incredible monster, and of course, being the most feared creature in the prime material plane, you would expect it. And close to impossible to defeat, but if you were to defeat it, not that its defeat would last, but if you were to do it, great rewards would follow. The body of the Tarrasque can produce the most wonderful of things, if you were to ever get your hands on it. The carapace of the creature is said to be filled with diamonds. In fact, many of the legends that speak of the Tarrasque claim that the carapace itself is made of diamond. Now that part is not technically true, though inside of the carapace you will actually find your fortune. If you were to get access to a chunk of the carapace, if you were to treat it with acid and then heat it in a furnace, the carapace would actually yield dozens, if not hundreds of diamonds buried within. Diamonds worth at least 1,000 gold pieces each. Indeed, the carapace might not be made of diamond, but inside you would find thousands and thousands of diamonds encrusted within its reflective shell. The underbelly of the beast, when mixed with the Tarrasque's blood and melted with meteoric iron, will produce a metal which can be forged by dwarf blacksmiths into 1 to 4 shields of +3 or more. Essentially, the front scales of the Tarrasque can be manufactured into the strongest shields in the world when combined with its blood. It takes 2 years to manufacture each of these shields, and the dwarves aren't likely to do it for free. In fact, a piece of the Tarrasque was used as a component in the strongest spell ever made. The pituitary gland of the Tarrasque was one of 3 special components needed in order to produce Karsus's avatar, the first, only, and last level 12 spell that was ever casted. A spell so powerful, it killed one of the strongest gods in existence and transformed the caster into a god himself. In fact, the spell was so powerful that the new goddess of magic literally shifted magic so that no one could ever cast a spell higher than level 9 again. That's what a piece of the Tarrasque as a spell component can do for you. Thank you so much for watching. I would like to personally thank my Patreon supporters Rukato Fan, Major Fail Gaming, Wyatt Curlin, Barry Maskant, 5E Magic Shop, Anthony Clias, Thraxeris, Toby Oliver, Dylan Baker, Zach Bowell, Simon Holman, and Meaty Ogre at best for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. If you would like to support me as well, then please head on over to patreon.com/MrRhexx to support. Alright guys, we're back. I'm sorry I took a week off for myself. I had a good time with some friends, but we're back. Hopefully I can now make a video once a week, maybe even twice a week if I have the strength for it. But let me know what you think about the video on the comments below. Make sure to leave me a like, make sure to follow me on Twitter if you can, and most importantly, this is what really matters guys, make sure to go and click that playlist so that you can see all of my D&D videos. I promise you, if you like this one, you're gonna like the other ones. They're all as good, so please make sure to do that if you want to. I don't want to force you to do something you don't want to, but hopefully you do want to. I'll see you guys now on the next video. Bye bye.